mean, you just came back from New Zealand.
I
I see you
did.
got the jacket on, which is crazy.
Yeah.
How was that experience?
New Zealand was a dream come true. It was a bucket list of mine to actually do the Ironman there. It was actually going to be my 2022 goal versus doing my Ironman first in Arizona. But just because of the COVID
Okay.
restrictions and just, you know, um, New Zealand, the country itself, not allowing foreign, countries inside their country, I couldn't do it, so I had to defer it to this year. Luckily, I was able to go, and it was. You ever go to a destination where you see a postcard and you're like, "This is nothing like the
Mm,
postcard." Well, this was
yeah,
exactly like the postcard, so it was
really.
really beautiful out there.
Wow. And so, what kind of made you, I guess, what brought New Zealand on your radar, I guess, in terms of the Ironman?
Yeah, so a buddy of mine was actually going to go with me do New Zealand too, and he kind of plugged it in my ear like, "Hey, let's do some research." I guess stepping back, I was never really into Ironmans until I guess COVID actually happened. So
Oh, really?
I'm a person that kind of I love to travel, I love to go to destinations and just be inside. So when COVID struck and everyone was working from home. I had to figure out something to do with my extra time that I had, right? So a buddy of mine that was into triathlons that actually became my coach, um, got me
Mm,
into it initially and said, "Hey, why don't we make our goal to do an Ironman and let's do it in New Zealand of all places?" So,
really?
if we're gonna die doing this, let's do it somewhere scenic at least, right? So,
Exactly.
we chose New Zealand. This is probably back in 2021 when we determined that's going to be our first Ironman, and
Really?
we wanted to work a year towards that goal to get there.
Wow. So, I mean, you're relatively new then into the Ironman or like the triathlete space then.
Yeah, absolutely. Before that, I've always like swam. I was a competitive swimmer, like in high school and partial in college. But triathlons, riding a bike, and actually doing like marathons, stuff like that, brand new.
Really, really. That's interesting, man.
Yeah, in fact,
Because
my first marathon was last year in Arizona. I never
really,
during the Ironman. Yeah.
oh my goodness. So you didn't do anything sort of, I guess, I mean, obviously the training, but in
Right.
terms of competing, the Ironman was like the, I guess, the biggest thing in terms of individually running, individually swimming, and individually biking that you've done.
Yep. Was the first.
Really? Wow,
Yeah.
that's crazy. So what were the kind of, I mean, obviously you go into training with an idea of what it's like. I guess before we get to the race, what was kind of like your plan for the training side of things? Because you've never done one before. This is your first one. How did you approach the training?
Yeah, that's a great question. So like training for me was completely new, as you mentioned. So I had a lot of guidance from my coach, or we call them Sherpas in Ironman world, just to kind of guide me through that step process. So we sat down and kind of developed a year-long training plan, so to speak, where it basically consists of um, 6 days of working out and having one rest day for an entire year. And in
Wow.
that kind of training plan, that footprint was what we called it 80/20, where 80% of your training and working out is just small efforts, so to speak, or short endurance rides or training. And then 20% was those long, intense training days, or so to speak. So during the
Mm,
week, for an example, I would do probably like hour workouts and just kind of building up towards that Ironman event. And then on the weekends would be my long endurance rides, long endurance runs, long endurance swimming kind of sessions there. So
okay.
beginning, it was very baby steps. I would be doing like maybe a 45-minute workout, and then towards the end, peaking towards the Ironman, that's when we're talking on the weekends. I was doing 4 or 5, 6 hour bike rides in the training plan.
Interesting, interesting. And so, what was the difference in intensity kind of just the volume, the distance, or was there an actual like intensity difference between, like you said, the 80 and the 20?
Yeah, so you would start out with everything from strength training, very, very small efforts there, and then just build upon that. And same with swimming, you would start off with just maybe 30 minutes, maybe doing 1,000 yards during the week, and then on the weekends, you're hitting 4,000 yards of swimming in the
Mm.
pool. So it's just very building upon on that intensity, so to speak.
And so, what was your I guess physical fitness base going into this? Like, how were the first month, 2 month, 3 months going into this? Was your body completely destroyed, or how did you kind of manage the recovery side of things as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, being new, I'm happy to say that I was probably classified as a beginner going into this,
Yeah.
not knowing what to do, and I was pushing in efforts, and then the recovery side was, that's where I felt the pain point, and that's where my coach said, "Have you thought about like, nutrition and what you're doing to, to fuel your body back, so you can recover pretty quickly?" And I honestly had no really real experience doing that before. So I went through in the Ironman world, you never try anything new on race day. So I went through the
Hmm.
phase of where you're experimenting with nutrition, right? So and adding supplements, and that's where your product came into play. Honestly, I was experimenting with your name brands, your off brands, whatnot, and I really wasn't getting recovered really well, and I was struggling with that. And actually, my coach said, "Have you tried Ion Performance Nutrition before?" And I said, "No, I haven't not tried it." So he actually gave me some samples and tried that, and it was honestly completely 180, where I saw my recovery time using the recovery series just overnight. I was like, "Okay, I'm ready for another exercise. Let's do this," and
Yeah.
just waking up more refreshed.
Yeah, and that's and that's kind of what we were trying to we intended with the products was for people like yourself who are pushing themselves and are at that end range of their physical capacity. And I mean, I think it's really underrated what minerals do for you. I mean, simply like magnesium before bed or even after a workout completely changed my I played professional soccer for 6 years, just to give you a little
Oh,
background.
awesome.
And I basically one season I didn't I was always the guy doing extra sessions and this and that. So I mean I really drained my body a lot. And one season it was hot summer, believe it or not, in Canada. Um, and I was just my performance was off, my sleep was terrible. I was, even gaining weight when my diet wasn't changing. And so like all these things were like, I was tired during the day, sleepless at night. All these things were kind of like confusing.
Yeah.
And my dad actually put me on to a rehydration mix from the World Health Organization
Huh.
and basically tried that and with which has a lot of sodium, a lot of potassium and whatnot. Tried that, and within, I kid you not, within maybe 24 or 36 hours, I was sleeping normally. I slept 9 hours, and like all the symptoms, not like cold turkey, but the sleep fixed like this, and then everything else slowly got back within like honestly a week.
Yeah.
And so I think like yourself, when you're training very hard, it's very easy to deplete those minerals
Mhm.
and not just minerals like micronutrients, all these other things like within nutrition. I think looking at just macros is a very you know um I don't know, simple, oversimplified way to look at nutrition nowadays. I think the micronutrients are extremely important. I think that you said it great yourself in terms of going from a quote unquote beginner to getting into some serious training. So yeah, the nutrition side of things is interesting. And so, what were some besides the supplementation? What were some of the things that you did in terms of, I guess, the actual food you were eating? Did you change any of that, or your hydration, or like how much water were you drinking a day? Like, what was that? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, hydration is definitely key, especially when you're doing long endurance sports activities. For me, I learned that almost the hard way. Again, being the beginner, I was going and doing the training as my coach prescribed to me, but I was definitely dehydrated in the aspect. So I learned the hard way. I learned that I needed to definitely drink, your 8 ounces of water multiple times throughout the day and just step that up. That's very key. My diet definitely changed it up. For me, it's the fresh stuff, so to speak, in the grocery aisle. So when you go in a grocery shop, I stay tend towards the edges of the grocery store where all the produce, fresh
Mm,
produce is at, versus the aisles where all the processed foods are at. So I went away from that. Whereas before I was just eating, whatever I wanted to basically. So there was a mental shift there and having to choose more nutritious food choices and going from there. But overall benefit, I saw that as well. So very important.
And so, what was kind of the biggest surprise for you in that? What was maybe something that you didn't expect, in terms of the diet side of things?
Yeah, just there's overall benefits that I really didn't realize that there were. I mean, you talk about eating right and all that good stuff, but until you actually do it
Hmm.
and actually, especially if you're training for a long endurance, you actually see the benefits in real time. Obviously, like you mentioned, it doesn't happen cold turkey, but over time, you definitely see it sleep wise. My actually during the exercises in the training program itself endurance is very key, right? So having to
Yeah.
last 4 hours on a bike, I could do that now. Whereas, the month before, I was struggling to, finish an hour on the bike. Whereas
Mm,
now I can finish 4 hours, and I'm thinking like I could probably go for another hour on the bike, no problem. So,
interesting.
yeah, mental clarity also, mental focus.
Yeah.
I could focus on what I'm doing by just eating right and with fixing my nutrition balance.
Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting. And so, um, in terms of I guess intra training, intra race, what were some of the things you tested, and what were some of the things that worked, and what were some things that didn't work in terms of, refueling throughout like those long 4 hour bike rides? I mean, are you refueling? That's another question. I don't know what your personal, you know, routine is
Yeah.
during those long exercises and even the race day.
Yeah, so in training, definitely you practice for as if you're going to be out there on the Ironman, right? So for me, definitely refueling is going to be key because during an Ironman event, you're depleting so many carbs. So you have to constantly be refueling throughout the event, or else you're not going to see it to the finish line. So the key is to practice during training as if it's the real thing, right? So for me, I tried everything. They say eat bananas during the race. For me personally, solid foods is not my thing. So I
Yeah.
stick to the more liquid diet, so to speak, during training sessions, and then also gels, nutrition gels, for me is key. So changing different brands. From brand A to brand B to brand C in nutrition gels, performance gels. I had to tweak that, what agreed with my stomach and my body versus what didn't, right?
Yeah.
So I found that key gel that actually worked with my body, that was providing me with additional carbs, also caffeine too is a factor too. So when to take caffeine during a long endurance ride and when not to take caffeine. It really varies per individual and body, right? So for me,
Yeah.
caffeine is works for me throughout the race. It just has that extra boost, and then also the nutrition, the liquid nutrition, right? So for me, like Gatorade endurance for me helps a lot, and also Hydrate series is actually really great as well. It helps a lot in keeping me hydrated, and then also has that boost of energy for some reason there, where I felt like I can go an extra mile, an extra 10 miles, so to speak. So
Yeah.
practicing that during training is definitely key.
Was there anything that you tried that didn't work during a training day or something?
Yeah, definitely. That did not work for me. Was as mentioned before, the solid foods was
Yeah.
not a thing for me. Some people try eating like a Cliff Bar while you're cycling or
Yeah. Yeah.
running. Any kind of solid food for me is not my thing. So that's where I had to tweak and actually just go to a all liquid kind of diet, so to speak. There was different
Okay.
brands also that didn't really work for me
Interesting.
as well. So it's just interesting with just the makeup of the product. So that's why I urge anyone that's trying to do like long endurance or an Ironman event is definitely try stuff out. And obviously they're going to give you free samples there on race day or the day before race day. I urge anyone do not try anything new on race day. And I've learned from trial by fire, right? With a smaller triathlon event. Thankfully, it wasn't an Ironman, but I
Yeah.
tried a free sample that I got and found out halfway through the course that it was not agreeing with my body.
Oh, really? So where was that one at?
That one was actually in Minnesota. I was just doing a sprint triathlon, so one of the smaller triathlons out there. Thankfully, like I said, it wasn't a long endurance one,
Yeah.
but quickly found out on the run portion of it that this was not going to be for me.
Yeah. So did you try the sample before the run or just before the race in general?
Just before the race in general. So yeah,
Okay.
don't try anything new on race day.
Yeah, that's yeah, I can imagine the I mean being stuck in a race, not feeling, that's not an ideal
100%,
place
yeah.
to be. So I mean, what's kind of next for you then in terms of are you going to just relax a little bit and just enjoy, completing the New Zealand one, or is there something else that you're thinking about already?
Yeah, so I have a busy schedule. I guess when the bug bites you, it bites you, right? So
Yeah.
I'm taking 2 weeks off from New Zealand, so I'm actually at the end of 2 weeks now, and I'm actually about to start up training back up again this weekend. So I'll be gearing up for ultimately the goal is another Ironman. I'll be doing that in September of this year in Maryland.
Okay.
But before that, I got plenty of other triathlons that I have on the schedule. In fact, in May I'll be doing a half Ironman event, and in June I will be doing a sprint triathlon, and following that in August I will be doing the U.S. Nationals Championships Olympic triathlon there in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, um, and then finishing up with the Ironman in Maryland.
And so do you see these, I guess there's the smaller races as training for the bigger one, or are you treating these as events themselves?
So a little bit of both. Admittedly, I use these as kind of guidance or motivation to keep the training going. I have something signed up. I already, I'm engaged to it. I'm going to be doing it. But I coordinate that with my training plan with all these races. So I use these as almost stepping stone towards the ultimate event, which in this case would be the Ironman in September. So yeah, great question. It really goes really well with training.
Okay. And so you said there's in the Olympic Ironman right before the final one in
Yeah.
September, you were saying. And so what's the difference between, because obviously there's, I guess, the standard Ironmans, and then what's the difference between this or
Yeah.
Olympic event?
Yeah, so it's all about distances. So triathlon's composed of sprints, Olympics, half Ironmans, and then the Ironman events, and it's just equal out in different distances. Sprints is your smaller distance, or your what it sounds like, right? You're sprinting, you're going all out, gassing all out on the triathlon, and stepping up is kind of your intermediate, is your Olympic versus your half Ironman, and then your full 140.6 miles Ironman event.
Okay. So it's all about the distances then.
Yeah.
And so have you, within your training, um, what's the maximum? Do you mimic an entire Ironman in terms of individual,
Yeah.
swim, bike, run, or do you how do you break those up, and do you do them on the same day? Like, how do you balance those three
Yeah.
um, events?
Excellent question. So in the course of the training plan, I have for myself, I have it broken up individually. So on your Monday, I'll go hit the pool and just focus on my swim technique and my endurance in the pool. Tuesday, for an example, I'll just rotate to the bike and be on my bike during that session, whether it's outdoors or indoors, depending on the weather conditions outside.
Hmm.
And then Wednesday will be just the run, focus on my running endurance technique, and then repeat it through for the weekend. On the weekends, those are my long endurance training sessions. So what I'll do there is what we call the brick exercise. So I will do a long endurance bike ride, for an example, just throwing it out there, maybe a 3 hour bike ride, and then immediately get off the bike and run a distance for 2 hours, so to speak. And then I'll practice that kind of transition from bike to run. And yeah, you
Yeah.
need to do that.
Yeah. How important are those transition periods?
It's good. I mean, it's key in a race, especially for the triathlons. It's going from point A to point B, so to speak. So on a Ironman event, you could be spending upwards of a couple hours on your bike, right? after that motion, you want to really want to get your legs adjusted to all of a sudden going from pedaling to running. So it's
Yeah.
definitely key in the training sessions to practice those brick exercises. So agility is everything, right? So as soon as you get off that bike and training, hop on those running shoes and then hit outside, hit the course or something like that.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. No, I mean, it's insane to see what you guys do within a single event, and I mean, New Zealand was probably, I don't know, like what was the temperature like? So where are you from? Where do you do most of your training?
So I'm from Georgia, so I do all of my
Okay.
training here in the South in Georgia for the most part.
So it
So
gets pretty hot then.
yeah, definitely gets hot.
Okay. So yeah, I think that, because that was another question of mine, is like, New Zealand, I guess it wasn't too hot,
Oh no,
if
no,
I'm guessing.
it was so March over there is definitely like the tail end of their summer. So during the event itself, we
Oh,
start,
really?
yeah. So the event itself was, I think we started out in the swim in the low 70s, but by the time I got to the bike, the high it was there was 91 degrees.
Oh my God.
So it was pretty hot.
My goodness, man.
Yeah,
And so how much weight do you weigh yourself before and after the event?
yeah, oh yeah.
And so how much did you lose that event?
You lose a couple pounds, that's for sure. So, for
Really?
give an example, on my watch and just looking at my data after the race, it was over 54,000 steps done in that day, and then I think a little over 8,100 calories burned. So
My
it
goodness,
it,
man.
it really kills you. It really
And so
depletes your
what's
system.
the yeah, what's the meal after that? Do you just go all out?
Yeah, definitely give me a slice of pizza, carve out.
Yeah. Yeah.
You stay hungry for a couple days afterwards.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, so I honestly took it because I mean it's winter over here,
Yeah,
or
right.
winter, spring, winter, whatever. So I'd expected, New Zealand, maybe it wasn't as hot, but that's 91. Wow.
Yeah, it
Because
kind of,
the heat is probably the worst thing that could, I mean, triathlon is difficult as it is, but the heat, man, I can't even imagine what it's like to do that, in 91-degree weather.
yeah, my first triathlon or Ironman was in Arizona in November of last year, and
Oh,
that was honestly ideal temperatures. I think the high was 72 that day. So it was nice and cool. Second Ironman around
yeah.
in New Zealand, that was actually the first race, long endurance race that I did, where it was in the high 80s, low 90s degrees. So it was pretty intense.
Also, okay, so it was new in terms of a race day
Yeah.
for you.
Yep.
And so how was Arizona? I guess Arizona's not as humid either as well. So I guess the conditions can be better over there depending on the time of year.
Yeah, definitely
Um,
dry heat.
Interesting. And so I guess when you look at yourself as a triathlete now, officially you completed it. Um, what what are your kind of goals moving into the future, besides, I guess, are there any specific races you want to complete? Is there a specific number of races? Is there times that you want to, what would be, I guess, the ultimate goal for you, in this new athletic pursuit?
Yeah, I mean, for me, came back to what I said earlier is I love to travel, right? And coordinating this Ironman event, that it's a global event, is to kind of bucket list, check some international destinations off, and
Mm,
travel and do this experience, this once in a lifetime experience in a new destination outside of the United States. I think is cool. Doing it in New Zealand, for an example, was awesome. I got to meet some friends that are all over the world now at that event, and just being there and sharing the same kind of bond with them and the passion with them. I think for me, future is definitely want to PR my next Ironman and increase my times there. So focus on that performance aspect of it and just push myself even further to the limit, so to speak, and see what I can do.
nice, nice. And so, I mean, I just wanted to kind of finish off, and um, I guess one thing I think people would be curious about is, what does race day of an Ironman look like for you, from waking up, I mean, even the night before,
Yeah.
till the end of the race? What does that, event process day look like for you?
Yeah, so it goes back a little bit. So for me myself, I like to arrive at an event 3 days prior, For New Zealand, definitely, just from the fact of jet lag,
Yeah.
just get
Yeah.
myself
Exactly.
acclimated, sleeped up. But for most events, I like to hit there 3 days prior, just to get the lay of the land, so to speak. I personally like to go out and do some course recon, so to speak. So I'll do a practice run on the course that I'll be running. I'll do a practice ride on the bike course that I'll be doing, and I like to get into the water of what to expect, so I can get my body feel for the temperature of that expectation, so to speak. Um, the day before the race is, that's where for me personally the race nerves come in. Usually I'm
Okay.
pretty calm and ready to go and pumped up leading up until that day before, and I'm like, oh, this is happening tomorrow. This is it,
Yeah.
right? So definitely having a good meal. For me personally, like that's where I usually shift away. Normally during my training, I stay away from carbs, so to speak, for the diet. But this is where that week of carb loading, so to speak, where I start to build up. So I have a nice meal that night before, and then I try to go to bed early. Now
Yeah.
most triathletes will say the night before a long race, the sleep is not the best. So you
Yeah.
try to hit the bed early, knowing the fact that you're probably going to toss and turn, just the fact that you're thinking about it. Um, for me personally, I actually sleep pretty well the night before the race.
Okay.
Knock on wood, I haven't had a
Yeah.
trouble sleeping, but I usually aim to hit the bed, around 8 or 9. Believe it or not, so it sounds really early, but
Yeah.
most triathlons transition area or that preparation where you're actually having to go or able to check out your bike, test your tire pressures, all the good stuff, opens up around 5 o'clock in the morning.
Really.
So for me personally, I go to sleep around 8 or 9. I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and then head to the transition area where all of my bike is at and my gear. So race morning itself, yeah, like I said, I hit there at 5 o'clock, checking tire pressures, filling some air in there if need be. I am prepping my bike with nutrition, so filling up all of my bottles with necessary nutrition, and stuffing my bike with those gels for that long ride.
Yeah.
And then obviously testing out my running gear as well, just making sure all the nutrition's there and everything like that. So after that, around 5, I'm usually done with all that prep work. Probably around, I would say, not too long, 45 minutes worth, 6 o'clock, 5:45. I'm hopping on my wetsuit usually at that point. I don't want to get into the wetsuit too early, elevate your temperature, but I'll get it on just before maybe 30 minutes or 20 minutes before I'm headed into the water, or expected to get into the water there. Um, get the wetsuit on, some pumped up for me. It helps a lot with friends and family there at race morning just to kind of hype me up a little bit, because that
Yeah.
race morning, that's when for me the race nerves are really right there.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. And I usually have those race nerves until I hit the water. As soon as I hit the water, it's weird. It like washes off, like it's go time
So
mode.
is that the starting event?
Yes. So
Okay.
triathlons, you start off with the swim, followed by the bike, and then you finish with the run. So in the Ironman
Okay. So
case, yeah, so the Ironman case, you start off with a 2.4 mile swim, and then you transition to a 112-mile bike, and then you finish it off with a full marathon, 26.2 miles.
wow. Wow. So I mean, the start of the race is basically what, gets rid of the nerves for you then, I'm assuming. Just getting it going.
Yeah, once I'm in the water, it's like, all right, we're doing this. Let's execute
Yeah.
now.
There's no turning back now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's execute.
Awesome, man. And so, yeah, I mean, it seems like it doesn't seem like a schedule that, promotes obviously a good night's sleep before, well rested, at least the night before. So, I mean, I guess everybody's in the same boat in that sense.
Yep.
So there's no advantage, but yeah, I guess you have to start early too to complete the entire race, within the day. You can't start at noon and expect to,
Yeah.
but interesting, man. Interesting. Is there any like other like singular events, not like triathlon, but like any like marathons or um things like that that you'd like to kind of compete in as well?
Yeah, I
Like I
think
know like famous marathons around the country.
Yeah, I think that's honestly actually one of my bucket lists too, or the next kind of phase. I think I mentioned to you earlier, the Ironman was my first marathon, was encompassing it with the triathlon. So I know
Which
I'm
is
a
crazy.
little crazy. So I like to compare my marathon time all by itself and just see where I'd stack up. So yeah, definitely upcoming marathons around the country here in the US. Definitely I'm considering looking at that. Maybe not in 2023, but that might be my 2024 kind of game plan is
Yeah.
to tackle some marathons.
Interesting, interesting. Yeah, no. You got a lot. You got a lot ahead of you, man. I'm excited to see what you end up doing with all this.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, no. And so, like I said, I mean, you get you. There's some good pieces of information that we're gonna cut up in this, and I mean, I don't want to take too much of your time as well. It's already 30 minutes, so I mean, we can stop this now, anyways.